Welcome to a very special episode of 𝗕𝗟𝗏𝗿 podcast. Over the last 10 episodes, we've covered technology, quantum, we've covered genomics, we've covered AI. But today, we stand at a very important milestone for the podcast. We've reached 50,000 subscribers. Yes, we've reached 50,000 subscribers in just 5 months.
That number means something, Rajiv.
Yes.
I think when we started, we probably didn't put any number in our mind. We just wanted to create great content, make sure our conversations land with the right people. And I'm glad we could find 50,000 curious minds who came in and subscribed to a podcast which was relatively unknown,
Yes.
new, and that too in an area which is cluttered with podcasts.
Right. And before we start today's podcast, I have a question for you.
Sure.
When we were bouncing off ideas, what gave you the conviction that a podcast like this is the need of the hour? Why and why now?
I think, Rajiv, I remember our conversations dating back to when you wrote the book, Clearing the Digital Blur. Probably that time we were on two sides. I was executioner, building things digitally at Kotak. You were getting into the insights of how enterprises should be ready. And I think you had a brilliant idea of writing a book, Clearing the AI Blur. And I realized this is an area where probably many more conversations are required to go through the layers and layers of noise and find what are the real signals, what's the real value, and how each stakeholder is thinking about it. The policymakers, the regulators, the researchers, enterprises, investors, and probably most importantly, the founders. And we realized probably there's nothing better than having these conversations to go deeper, unearth where the real noise versus sound separation lies. And hopefully, I think our conversations led to this idea, and I'm glad we took this.
Absolutely.
forward.
Incredibly grateful that this is happening. So one of the things that we also were thinking about is how to get the right mix. Right? Usually when we talk about AI, there is a this or that kind of a conversation, right? Either a very rosy picture or a doomsday scenario. Either it's a US versus China. The conversation is always polarized. What I think we started doing is to find nuanced point of view. And I think what you're talking about is stakeholders from policymakers to founders to technologists and across the entire spectrum of business leaders, including founders.
Yes.
I think it was important for us to hear those voices. And I'm glad we did. Right?
But tell me, Rajiv, you run KNOLSKAPE, very successful firm. You have been looking at enterprises with different lens. What was your motivation to do this?
Right. So always when we talk to companies, they talk about a readiness challenge. Oh, we know AI is coming. Back in the day, it was about digital. We know digital is upon us, but our people are not ready. And usually starts with leadership. And so what should be the perspective of a leader, right, is usually the question that gets asked. And that makes me think deeply about what is it that people have to do right now. And that leads me to have conversations with leaders. And that's what took me to you back in the day when you were with Kotak Bank. I remember those conversations we had. Those were all brilliant conversations that gave me clarity on what organizations have to do. Now, this time around, AI is a completely different beast, right? So it's far more accelerated and 10x more impactful, I think, when implemented the right way. So that's when I had reached out to you. You were mulling over a book. We reached out and we said, okay, let's first do a podcast before we start writing. And here we are at 50,000 subscribers.
Yeah, I think it's just the beginning. I would just say that a big shout out to each and everyone who trusted in this, started to subscribe, love our channel. And I think that is giving us all the motivation to keep bringing more deeper conversation, bring some amazing guests, and ensure that their time that they're spending on this podcast is truly worth it.
Absolutely.
So today, instead of one guest, I think probably it's a great time to revisit the first 10 episodes and each of the guests
Great idea.
that we had on the show. Because I think each guest left some really very, very touching and deep impact on not just how the AI will lead, but how we should be thinking with AI as we look ahead.
Let's go ahead. Okay, let's start with episode 1. That was with Umakant Soni.
I think future of AI is transformational. I think we no longer will have the same Earth again. So it's going to be, transformation in a very deep way. Futurization without humanization of technology is unsustainable. Humanity first approach to AI is something that we would have to adopt. All the artists in UK, including some of my favorite ones, are protesting that they have no incentive to create music anymore because we were going to scrape it and use it to train AI without giving the profits back. It's a challenge. Internet is now flooded with AI generated content, right? Which is subpar. So if you think about it, today if I take a model, try to develop it on an internet which is post 2022, right? It is going to be in some ways polluted. Kolhapuri craftsmen, they can't even speak English today. They can't read those markets. But maybe through AI, they're able to transcend those barriers. What could result in? We could, create a massive, economy where, all these segments are vibrant. Maybe potentially we could create 250 billion north of value.
He challenged the very framing of the AI race, if you can call it a race. It is not just US versus China.
No, absolutely. And I think he made a very powerful case about the futurization with humanization.
Right.
And what a sustainable AI truly means.
Yes.
I think he also brought a lot of insights from the scriptures.
Yeah.
And how we should be mentally more aware, especially when the machines are becoming more and more intelligent. So what human awareness means in a highly progressive AI world.
Right. So what I took away from that conversation is while the American model is optimizing for profit and rapid growth, the Chinese model optimizes for state power. The question that Umakant posed in that episode is, can India build a humanity-first AI model? That was deeply insightful.
And I think it's rightly so, because India has proven that you can build population-scale digital infrastructure. I think what India has done in the first and second wave through the identity, payments, the data and the consent layer, I think we have got many of those building blocks, and we could demonstrate that each of these could solve, and not just solve, but probably make technology really accessible and impact lives of people around.
Absolutely.
And I think which brings us to the episode 2 with Sharat Sharma.
The biggest learning that I've had is don't be loyal to your company. Be loyal to the problem that you're solving. India is 3% of global trade, roughly about 7 to 8% of the global economy, about 17 to 18% of the global population, and yet does more than 50% of the digital transactions. The most radical view was we should not add any more vaccination sites, which is what actually India went for. And that was such a radical idea. Bangalore airport is better than Chennai airport. Yet the domestic usage fee of Chennai is higher than that of Bangalore. I think it's easy to learn. It is hard to unlearn. And especially when you have to unlearn something. You have to have a powerful impetus to do that. In this word called combinatorial innovation, India decided to do was to build building blocks, primitives. What AI is going to do is to allow a small 3% business to look like a 300% business.
Again, reminded us of a staggering fact that India drives more than 50% of the global digital transaction. I wasn't aware, frankly, even though I was into payments and lending for very long, that we just didn't overtake China, but we do more than 50% of digital transactions.
That was an eye-opening statistic, and he starts the episode with that. He's a master storyteller, obviously, and that statistic with just a fraction of global trade, right? And this is not just coincidence. It's I think the term he used in the episode is combinatorial innovation, where Aadhaar came in for identity, UPI for payments, and DEPA for consent-based data sharing. I think these three innovations coming together, I think created the right circumstance for India to leapfrog.
And I think Sharad also touched a very important point on the strategic autonomy.
Yeah.
Probably this shoot happened about 3 months back.
Yeah.
And now we are seeing gradually this is becoming the center subject of any discussion.
Yeah.
That how do you not just think about consuming technology but become more resilient and have a strategic autonomy.
Absolutely.
I think he also brought in a very interesting thing about that. As a country, how do we move from process innovation to a product innovation?
Yeah, he's a big product first kind of a person. Yeah, and that requires a mindset shift, infrastructure shift, openness, and long-term thinking. While for services, you respond to certain demand, whereas here we need to take a long-term perspective and take some risks as well.
Absolutely. And I think the whole process and the back of the story came out during the internet era.
Yeah.
And hopefully in the AI era now, India could lead with the product.
Yeah.
Because you can be anywhere and still you can make products for the world.
Absolutely. And with episode 3 with 𝗕𝗟𝗃𝗀𝗀𝘀, it was a reality check for me in many, many ways.
The reason why so many AI projects fail is because these models are not able to handle the complexity of how enterprises use data, the complexity of decision making, complexity of budgets, who are the users.
And including how do you implement from privacy, security. Right. Classic analogy here is you can accelerate fast provided you have good controls and brakes.
Indeed.
So otherwise you will meet with an accident. And I think creating that right framework in which you can innovate and keep expanding probably is one way in which I anchored a lot of innovation in my career. So
yeah, one of the myths about innovation is that innovation requires no constraints, right? The more free space you have, more imagination you'll have. It doesn't work like that. There's an IBM guy who went and made a 10 million, back in the day, like 50 years ago, made a blunder because of which the company lost $10 million. And he was brought to his manager, CEO, whatever, and he was very afraid. He was sure they was going to get sacked. The guy says, I just spent $10 million training you. You better not make the same mistake again, but make other mistakes.
Is there always a tension between the frontier models getting into some of these post-trained use cases as well? Like OpenAI is now talking about a jobs platform, right? That's quite ironic. On the one hand, we talk about jobs being taken away by AI, but OpenAI is starting a jobs platform.
If you have a diamond culture, just play out like 5 years later what happens, because you don't have enough people at the bottom.
Right.
So who occupies the middle? So it's an unsustainable shape.
It's not a stable structure.
It's not a stable structure.
Yeah.
A country like Albania,
Yeah.
it's a small country, but Albania has now a cabinet rank minister who's an AI.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is they're saying that they will root out corruption. All procurement is going to happen through this AI, and therefore it will be fair and unbiased and so on.
95% of the AI projects fail.
Right.
I think that was a big headline.
Yeah, and not because AI is not ready or algorithms are weak.
Yeah, because organizations are not ready. I think there are too many pilots, there are Mickey Mouse projects.
Yeah.
Organizations don't really think long term when they initiate. They think we'll figure out on the way.
Yeah.
But I think the data readiness, the whole AI readiness, skills, people, long-term strategy, probably touched about many building blocks that one needs to think of while moving on a successful enterprise readiness for AI.
Right. To me, that was a good masterclass on AI adoption in an enterprise. And I think culture is the hardest variable. When we asked him questions around, I think culture was front and center in everything he spoke.
That was even so in the digital, and I think you covered a part of that in your digital blur.
That's right.
Book
that's
as
right.
well.
So he says AI adoption is not a technology problem; it's actually a leadership problem. That was quite a good framing that he had.
I can't agree more, because being on the board of a couple of financial institutions and seeing it from different vantage point, I strongly believe that you need a lot more awareness and hands-on experience, right from board to the senior management down, if you have to start embarking on this and be as a long-term player.
Absolutely.
And I think our episode 4 was very interesting.
Yes.
I remember when we were prepping for it, and we looked at health tech the first time, and the genomics and what is the impact of DNA. And I think Pranav, he just expanded our conversations into healthcare.
In the NFL, there is a gene called as 𝗕𝗟𝗃𝗀𝗃. If you don't have a positive variant for it, they don't give you a fund. If a simple pharmacogenetic test could decide whether the drug you are prescribed with will heal or harm you, shouldn't this be standard for everybody? The first human genome sequence project happened, it costed around $100 million or something to get one genome sequence. Today, the cost of doing that at scale, if you're doing like a population program with the Singapore government or etc., that's what. I don't think they're paying more than $200,000. In a country like India, I think genetic testing should be free. So, in fields like cancer, cardiology, like long QT syndromes, etc., it's infertility. that genomics works. So the Indian Genome Project is around 4,750 unique populations just in India. To put that into perspective, there are around 200 countries in the world, right? So the diversity you get in India is humongous.
Look at a disease, for example. Back in the day, people said, "Oh, it's a gods." Then you had the germ theory, and now we are talking about genome. There are people already talking about epigenetics being more important than genetic.
DNA is a blueprint to your body. So think of DNA as a layer. Don't think of it as a product. It's the structure on which you build other applications. Genetics is not a fad. It is something that is the most deterministic thing that we know.
I thought was very interesting in that is genomics becoming a compute problem, right? Where you have humongous amounts of data, and how do you process it? And the cost of sequencing has collapsed, right? So you put all of these again mega trends together, combinatorial innovation happening. The bottleneck is no longer biology; it's data interpretation, right? That's complete reframing of the problem statement.
No, and I think the classic case is that 𝗕𝗟𝗫𝗃 is getting the Nobel Prize for protein synthesis.
Yes.
I think the large use cases of data compression in AI stays in healthcare and health sciences.
Yeah.
And I think with a vast amount of data and challenges around the population scale, health and wellness issues that a country like India faces, probably it was a very apt conversation about looking at AI in health tech space and how things like the personalized medicines can be scalable, or probably early diagnosis, or your food and nutrition plans could be personalized.
Yes.
So I think a great interesting conversation.
Absolutely. We speak about hyper-personalization in digital. I think we are almost there at the cusp of it when it comes to health and well-being. So AI is no longer just software, it is entering cells. And I keep telling my parents as well, just be healthy in the next few years. AI is going to solve pretty much every known...
Till then, stay healthy.
Stay healthy, right? So that's on Pranav episode. Then came episode 5 with Dr. 𝗲𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗿.
So when singularity happens, literally you won't need to learn anything. Anything that you want to know can be actually downloaded into your brain.
Like they say, it's like sequence of many small innovations finally adds up to what we end up seeing it as a breakthrough technology.
Today we have technologies of the gods, right? And something seems to be coming from the future, but we have mindsets from the medieval times.
Most scientists are not used to taking targets. They are very happy writing papers, but they're not happy creating products. So that's the change that we are bringing in National Quantum Mission. When we launched it with all the scientists sitting in a big hall, the first thing I said, guys, you got to change. We promoted the whole idea of startups. And we created a startup program in quantum, which is unheard of in government. And therefore, to protect ourselves in future, for technology sovereignty, we need to have a full software stack. The world is no longer about how many armaments you have. The world is all about what technology you know.
Right.
And the wars will be fought with technology. Economics is guided by technology. Combination of AI and quantum is going to be the biggest breakthrough that you can think of. Because AI and quantum together will actually solve many problems of the world than either quantum on its own or AI will. So what we are doing in the National Quantum Mission is coming out with a policy and telling people, be prepared for the quantum era, make yourself quantum secure. So quantum security is going to be the highest level agenda for the country in my mind. And what I tell every engineer that I meet, don't be satisfied with the engineering that you are trying to do today. I call it having a range. For example, it's like a T. The top of the T is where you know many other things. The bottom of the T is the depth with which you know one subject. Already the crisis is on us of technology sovereignty. We don't have technology sovereignty.
Absolutely.
All hardware is Chinese.
What a mind-blowing episode it was.
Amazing. I think he went beyond AI. And I think most interesting thing I found was how AI with quantum has a significant, I would say, leapfrogging. It could be more transformational than what AI alone could.
Yeah.
And I think this combination, like he rightly said, is not incremental, it's exponential.
For sure. And he emphasized sovereignty again. I think that was the theme that kept coming back. if wars of the future are technological, then owning hardware and software becomes critical. So it's not either or, you need an and.
Absolutely. And I think he also spoke very interestingly about that this is not just about innovation.
Yeah.
It's about the readiness, the resilience, and how as a country we can chart our own path.
Yes.
Moving beyond software, moving beyond chip, fab,
Yes.
the whole hardware story.
Yes.
And I think it's time for us to look at also a long-term vision for the country,
Right.
rather than just taking short-term bets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think episode 6 with Rajesh Jain was brutally honest.
CMO needs to start thinking of himself and herself as the chief AI and profits officer of the company. The marketing today is a $1 trillion industry worldwide. 700 billion is digital. 70% of the $700 billion is what I call ad waste. It's money brands are spending reacquiring the customers they had. Revenue taxes. So most businesses are paying 20 to 30% revenue taxes. They are paying it to ad tech platforms for reacquisition. They are paying it to marketplaces because they're not able to build direct relationships. They are paying it to discounts to bring in one and done customers. And now soon they're going to pay it to AIs.
I think the traditional marketing, the way it's done, in my mind, it's dead. If people have not yet recognized it, it's time probably, we say that loud and out, that it's time for firms to start thinking of marketing and business as one single integrated unit.
Marketing's focus really has to be to build relationships with existing customers, maximize lifetime value.
Yeah.
And I think now for the first time, marketers can solve this problem. And that's using AI. I think the first big impact of AI in marketing will be the ability to create microsegments. And that's where the AI marketer comes in. And then it can call the segmentation agent, the content agent, the scheduling agent, multiple agents together to essentially help do what no marketing team, irrespective of the resources, can actually do.
So maybe I'll have an e-commerce agent that does my shopping. I just broadly give my prompt,
Absolutely.
and it reads my behaviors, my needs, and it sort of buys stuff for me. If I don't like it, it returns.
No, and the mantra actually the marketing department should basically, or the CMO should have, is never lose customers. So for me, agentic marketing is about solving the personalization, the segmentation problem, and neo marketing is about solving the attention problem, because this is a problem which has been ignored. Success, or the utopian vision would be where there is zero ad waste, very little revenue taxes, which means brands have greater profits. And that profit then can be reinvested back in the business for more products, for better customer experiences.
A large part of marketing spend is waste. He just shook probably a lot of marketeers around with that statement.
That's right. And businesses are paying revenue tax, is what he calls, to platforms because they don't own direct customer experience, right, or customer relationships. So they end up reacquiring their existing customers using their marketing dollars.
Yeah, and I think Rajesh has depth of experience in the way he has looked at marketing through generations.
Yeah.
He's brutally honest in what he says, even though he says it so nicely.
Right.
And I think he spoke about looking beyond personalization in marketing, because marketing shops are not just highly inefficient.
Yeah.
But I think with the whole agentic AI, you probably can do a hyper personalization, more targeted for what a customer really values, rather than spamming customer with things that are just so irritating, as each one of us probably get enough of those spams from different brands.
Right. And we spoke briefly about agentic commerce as well. In the future, will marketeers focus on the human or the agent that's doing the commerce? So those were great insights. And he also spoke about the role of the CMO. That was quite interesting. He said that role will evolve into the Chief AI and Profits Officer. And that's a structural shift. It's not just a nomenclature.
Absolutely. And I wonder how many marketing officers, CMOs truly understand AI.
Yeah.
Because I know they understand data.
Yeah.
But now as you start moving to the next generation, probably the next set of CMOs will come with a very different domain expertise rather than coming from just brand or marketing.
Sure. And episode 7 with Ranjan Reddy reminded us that intelligence scales both ways.
Basically look at the combination of compliance, fraud, security, and all the losses that anybody goes through in financial services or in just in digital economy that has surpassed $1 trillion a year.
But the fraud network seems to be far more organized than the financial service network.
Yeah, there are more identity thefts taking place in a single day more than that, right? So if you look at the digital casualties are much more than even the physical casualties in that just one market.
Sounds like fraudsters are a lot more organized. They don't have cybers. Banks do. And also this trust seems to be episodic. Whereas on the other hand, things are happening on a continuous basis. So we need a unified continuous model to combat this threat.
Today, for example, in the United States, where a lot of people on a daily basis, there are at least about anywhere from 500 to 1,000 deaths a day on the freeways of the United States. There are more identity thefts taking place in a single day more than that.
Banks often don't really follow KYC in spirit. What you do is KYB and not KYC. So know your document, but not know your customer.
There is a fraud GPT, warm GPT. I can, for $1,700, right? I get a subscription to that and then I can create whatever fraud I want. So today, I think I personally find one of the scourge of our user experiences OTPs. The reality is today, actually a lot of the technologies exist where you can verify someone on a device by binding their device or even behavior and a bunch of things that I mentioned in the same amount of time with same amount of cost, right? Then like an OTP. But you know why most of the time you need an OTP? Because consumer wants it. If you look at outside US and Europe, markets like India or Brazil, their digitization journey is relatively new, right? Like about 15 years or so. But they are leapfrogging it much faster. So what took US to get the 30 years, we are getting there already in 15, 20 years, and we are getting much more advanced. And if I look at India specifically, right, you're looking at this from, if I divided it between identity and transactions, just identity-based fraud, you're looking at identity theft, account takeover, or any of these things, you've seen at least 30% more rise, like I mentioned, and that basically amounts to not just few hundred crores, but thousands of crores.
Yeah, I think Ranjan touched a very important point, and we have been hearing a lot about the whole digital frauds, mule account. As we are embarking more and more on digital-led transaction and digital economy, it's also creating a very different set of challenges. And I think today what he touched most impressively was digital fraud is $1 trillion industry.
Yes, massive.
I think that number itself was shocking.
Right.
And I think another interesting thing I said, I realized he said fraudsters are using AI deception techniques better than what enterprises are.
Yes.
So they are way ahead of the learning curve and implementing it to create real value out of AI.
Right.
While we are here defending and still not organized well enough.
Yes. I think that's my key takeaway from that episode, where the scamsters are really well organized. It's the one thing that they do. Whereas in organization, security is 1 out of the 10 things that you take care of, and you're not organized well enough. You're siloed. Nobody is looking at data in a one single hole. And static KYC is obsolete. That's another takeaway.
Absolutely. I think we have been seeing it that a very definition of mule account in financial service is not when you onboard a customer.
Right.
But what happens to that customer during its journey with a financial institution. And I think that's where something he spoke very, very deeply that stayed with me was that the identity plus behavior combined with the network intelligence.
Yes.
I think one has to start looking at those on an ongoing basis.
Right.
Because fraud networks never sleep.
Yes.
And they are becoming sharper. So how do you keep becoming smarter with time?
Right. So it's not a static one and done kind of a thing. It has to be real time and on demand.
And I think our episode 8 with 𝗲𝗽𝗶𝘀, it reframed human machine debate. I know Jaspreet is a great thinker.
Yeah.
And he did bring some really interesting points on human versus machine.
AI, in my opinion, will impact, disrupt every process of every company, of every industry, in every country.
The toughest ethical dilemma when working with AI today?
I think there are so many of them. On a more practical level, it's the copyright issues, privacy issues. On a more global level, it is the environment issues.
These conversations have been going on for long, human versus AI. I think today AI is replacing jobs, but more importantly, replacing those individuals who have failed past to learn and coexist with AI.
So, I think that the whole framing of human versus AI has been wrong all along. We've never talked about electricity versus humans, or computers versus humans, right? It's always been an and. Somehow in this case, we started putting the versus part, and I think that framing absolutely is wrong, and we're learning now that it's and. It's human plus AI. As AI becomes more powerful, humans will become a luxury good. In many ways, as software as a service, it's going to give way to something called service as a software in organizations. And so, business models will change to, what you produce at the end, you pay for rather than for access to software. And obviously, in this new service as a software architecture, it's going to be humans plus agents.
And you've argued that India may not lead in innovation yet, but it can absolutely lead in distribution, right? And your concept of Jan AI, that's a pretty interesting coinage. Generative AI as a digital public good, right? Builds beautifully on the India stack model. That's something that India has done well so far.
I think it would be foolish for us, frankly, to try and out-innovate the two AI superpowers which are out there. Where we need to be focusing on is, some of our models, not necessarily as big as good, and a lot of their models integrated in some sense into the India stack.
Then personalization, that's for the worker, and the workplace needs humanization.
Absolutely. So the framing was excellent. He said it's not human versus AI, it is human plus AI. So a lot of great insights on how to prepare for that future.
Yeah, and I think he also spoke about how organizations will recruit AI agents just like they recruited human. I think we'll end up having a lot of AI workforce.
Yeah.
That will require a very different HR.
Yes.
And I think the whole AI literacy becomes a core foundation.
Yeah, it does. And perhaps the era of traditional jobs will shrink, right? And the era of entrepreneurs expands. And I think that's another theme that has come out in all these episodes, the focus on entrepreneurship. While large enterprises might struggle to keep the jobs that we have today, they have to become agile and nimble. I think the focus then shifts to entrepreneurs.
Yes, entrepreneurs, but of course, I think today with the kind of job losses around, I would say it's not about jobs, it's about the skills.
Yeah.
And unless one is learning fast enough, and like we famously discussed that, unless you learn to work with machines, humans alone may not have a future for sure.
Right.
Machines alone will win faster or not known.
Yeah.
But definitely humans with machines.
Yeah.
They can definitely last much longer.
Yes,
So,
yes. And episode 9 with Ganesh Krishnan brought entrepreneurial clarity. I think he's one of the OGs of early stages of Indian entrepreneurship. He brought in a lot of stories from his entrepreneurial journey.
For me as an entrepreneur, the hardest decision has been when you pivot, you let people go. Today, there is so much of disruption, transformation, whatever cliches you want to use, it's happening. I think the best way is that look at what are the transformative changes happening. Don't go there.
Yesterday, I came across this whole boom around building AI data centers.
Yeah.
Air conditioning companies in India are doubling and tripling their headcount.
Percentage chance of success of a startup or entrepreneur. All of us start thinking that we become a unicorn and grow big. The chances of that happening is less than 10%. If you're talking about betting on a game which has got less than 10% chance of success, first of all, you have to be stupid. Using technology or using some level of disruption, if I can call it, to change the status quo. And this is a great opportunity in India, right? I mean, everything is broken. And we are speaking in Bangalore. I walked 700 meters to come to this place. Now, this I'm not saying in a bad sense. I've been in India all 64 years. I didn't work only in India. But this is a great opportunity. So if you can come and change the status quo a bit and try to solve for any of this, you can create a big.
There was a connotation of businesses and poor ethics, for example, back then. And if you're getting into business, it must mean there is something wrong.
But as you know what happened from 2000 onwards, the dot-com boom did not happen, dot-com bust happened. Because first 6 months was nice, everybody was welcoming us, we started talking contracts, we started talking purchase orders and all that. And after that, all hell broke loose. When I used to go back for the next visit to the US, the company did not exist. So it was a forced pivot. I can now claim that there's a lot of foresight, a lot of analysis, nothing there. It was basically 𝗕𝗟𝗏. I remember in 2001, there is a New York Times front page article which said, I'm calling from Bangalore, but dare not say so. With all the knowledge, if you were having this conversation 5 years back, I'd said, first of all, quick commerce is a fad. You'll never make money. People don't need anything in 10 minutes.
And in the largest cities, the homes are small. So unlike West, you do not have space to stock a lot of things.
Yeah, that's a
So
great
I think we
point.
want to maintain fewer inventories so that you just get it done.
So the thinking is, dark store or quick commerce platform is an extension of your kitchen.
Yeah, I think most impressive was in a gold rush, sell shovels.
Yes, that will stay.
I
with me.
think data center probably finding solutions that everybody needs.
Yes.
Security, fraud.
Yeah.
How are we thinking about it? And I think he brought some amazing insights around the shovels aspect of it.
Yes. And derived demand often creates more durable businesses than headline applications. That will stay with me because usually we talk about AI and there's some headline news and we think that, hey, that's the disruptor. But the durable business is often a derived business. So that was a fantastic insight.
I think that was quite an in-depth point he made. I think he also spoke very well about how are you solving the real pain.
Yeah.
Because solving the real pain probably will last you longer in that business.
Yeah.
And second is in the world which is so uncertain, unless you build a reasonably strong unit economics, hoping that future will be somewhere in the distant future.
Yeah.
Probably that future may never arrive.
That's right. That's right. And episode 10 with Nitin Seth took us inward, right? That's one thing I resonated with, his balance of the outside world versus what happens within. And that was a fascinating journey we went on with him.
AI will make the technical skills less relevant. It will make the domain understanding a lot more valuable. Over the next 15 years, 35 to 50% of all jobs will go. 90 to 98% of all current jobs will get impacted in some fashion. So everything will change. AI reskilling, upskilling is like a Kool-Aid. Everybody just has been parroting those words, without really understanding what the heck it means.
You're right, because digital led to creation of a lot of data. And I think data is like a crude oil, but unless you know how to extract and process something out of it, crude in itself is not the value if you cannot extract. They looked at the accuracy of a doctor using AI, and an AI prescribing the solution. And I was surprised with the data that I got through this research. They said doctors had an accuracy of 74%. Doctors using AI tools was 76%, and AI in itself was 90%.
We need a major pivot, which I don't think we are recognizing enough. We are still in some la-la land. If we don't take major actions, we are going to be hit the hardest. Because the growth in our economy over the last 2 decades has been driven by services. Those are exactly the services which are going to be impacted by AI first.
This idea of leapfrogging in India. Oh, we missed that boat, but don't worry about it. We'll catch the next one. That seems to be ingrained in our thinking. No problem if the US is ahead or China is ahead. We'll leapfrog somewhere.
What's the fundamental difference and advantage of human intelligence over machine intelligence? It's the breadth. It's the vastness. Because when you talk about narrow intelligence, you can't use the machine.
Yeah, I think Nitin also having written 3 wonderful books and a lot of insights, not just from India, but probably around the world.
Right.
I think he brought something very interesting is that how AIs are outperforming humans in empathy-based tasks.
Yeah.
And that's, I would say a proactive signal. I remember I brought in that point when Nitin was saying that one data point said that just standalone AI outcome on doctors or advice is better than what is a standalone doctor is. But that's only till the time I think humans learn how to use AI better. That's not going to be a...
Right. And it also brings this very important question. So what remains uniquely human? If everything can be done by AI, from driving a car is incredibly complex activity that is taken over. Surgeries can be performed. Writing poetry, something that was uniquely human. Everything is now getting done by AI. So I think it poses a very important existential question to us. What is uniquely human?
I think breadth, consciousness, problem identification.
Right. He spoke about his possible framework, which is timeless. The shift from human in the loop to human above the loop. I think that was a fascinating point. Usually we talk about, hey, there is AI, but there is human also in the loop. But he's saying over time, humans have to learn to be above the loop, meaning think about problems, think about identifying problems. For solutions, there is AI.
Yeah, and continuous learning as survival. I think that was a very, very profound statement he made, because in the world where we just don't know how it may look tomorrow, keep learning. Because if you are curious, a curious mind always will figure out their purpose, relevance, and hopefully impact.
Right. And when I sign the book, Deepak, this is the line that I literally write every time. Machines are learning. Are you? I think that's the most important question right now around continuous learning.
And they never sleep.
They never sleep.
But you have to sleep.
Right. So now let's zoom out a little bit and talk about the patterns. What did we learn from these 10 episodes? To me, across policy, fraud, marketing, genomics, quantum, startups, one pattern stands out, which is technology is accelerating. There's no doubt about that. Institutions are lagging, right? And mindsets are the real bottleneck. We are still applying our thinking from maybe 10 years ago, and we are thinking that maybe that will help us here, but this is a slightly different beast.
No, fully agree. And I think India sits at an inflection point today. The moment for India is now. I won't say it's already too late, because there's no point saying what we haven't done. But I think it's a time for us to move away from back office to the world, to truly a product nation. Look at hardware and software both together. Don't just worry about LLMs, but start looking at applications, security, network. How does it create true value for enterprises, for population scale problems? And I think each of those aspects that we could touch upon from the lens of enterprises to founders, we believe that this journey has just started to unfold for India. We still have a long way to go.
That's right.
But yes, I think this is what we could achieve through our conversation so far.
And every single conversation revealed that slowly but surely the needle is moving, and it's just a question of time before India catches up in some domains and leads the world in others.
No, absolutely. And I think every single conversation, if you look through the thread of our speakers, Sharad and Umakant from Product Nation, 𝗲𝗍𝗏, how we looked at the data and Aadhaar, and so now we are talking about quantum. It shows that the progress, not just in conversations, but I think what we have been making through conversations.
And 50,000 subscribers, and you always say this, we are just getting started. It's such an exciting journey to be learning from all of these experts. The one thing that it also reveals is there is space for serious thinking. There is a lot of clutter out there, shots that are catchy and trendy, but here we have conversations that have depth and meaning. So if there's one insight across all these 10 episodes, it is this: AI will amplify whatever we are. If we are reactive, it amplifies chaos.
No, I fully subscribe. And I think if we are thoughtful, it amplifies human potential. Also, I think future is not something that happens to us. It's something that we build.
Absolutely. And to our 50,000 strong subscribers, thank you so much.
And to the next 50,000, stay curious.
Stay curious.